All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and my mic was muted, and it's not muted now. At least I can see the levels going up and down, so that's really good. And hope you had a great weekend. It is Halitics, as I mentioned, and love to have you being part of the program, part of Halitics on Facebook, and we're trying to build something here, make things a little bit better. A real focus on, I don't want to say Democratic Party politics. We're focusing on American politics and providing an alternative to both parties. I do talk a lot more about really how bad the Dems are than about how bad the Republicans are, because there's kind of an assumption here, that Trump, we don't really need people. You kind of get it. And if you really like Trump, if you're a Trump supporter, that's fine. I mean, that's you, but I don't think you're going to be receptive necessarily to the message that we need to go to an alternative to the Republican Party, right? But if you believe in what I think Democrats have said, I've heard this. Hey, we have shared values. Yes, we disagree. I heard this over the weekend. I was at a meeting at an event. And by the way, I'm not a registered Democrat. I am a registered Green. And I have a lot of, I don't believe in shaming Republican voters or Trump voters. I think that they often had very legitimate reasons for voting for Trump. I'm not going to condemn them for doing so. I think there were two terrible choices in the last election. The Democratic choice and the Republican choice were both terrible. But from my conversations with Democrats and Republicans, both direct, verbal, having a actual sit down and talking to them, and conversations with Republicans, my general sense is that the values that Democratic politicians espouse and that Democratic voters espouse aren't consistent with what Democratic politicians actually do in office, that they consistently do not vote in the way they say they believe, that they vote for policies, they vote for constituencies that are anathema, that are antithetical to what most Democrats say they support. So most Democrats actually, a perfect example is the ongoing support for Israel by congressional Democrats. And yet the great majority of Democratic voters do not support Israel. A similar issue is healthcare. Most Americans support Medicare for all. I don't believe most Republicans do, but most Democrats most certainly do, and a very significant number of Republicans do as well. So I am also talking to Republicans. If you believe that you deserve healthcare, that you shouldn't be captive to the for-profit healthcare industry, that you shouldn't, there shouldn't be death panels that, billion-dollar companies have, make the decisions as to whether you get care or not. Definitely, let's join together and build a Green Party alternative. I think that enough Democrats and some Republicans together would embrace the policies that the Green Party espouses. But my sense is that, by and large, maybe I'm wrong, we've seen this in polling, Republican voters, Trump voters are less dissatisfied, less angry at Trump. There is anger, right? The Epstein situation is a perfect example. The cover-up continues. The Republicans now refusing to divulge who was, on Epstein's list. Who did he go to? Who were his clients? Republicans covering that up just as Democrats did. And that is really, really aggravating Republicans. But my sense is that a lot of the policies that Trump is imposing, whether it's tariffs, which he's done very, very haphazardly, and he goes back and forth on it, but Republicans support that. I think Republicans support the efforts Trump has made to broker some kind of a peace, some kind of an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. And I'm not saying he's done a great job of it. I'm not saying any of that. But the broad stroke policies that Trump claims to support, and apparently seems to, with some exceptions, I don't think Republicans are particularly angry or upset about. They don't feel like he's betrayed them. But if you look at what Democrats have done, I think a lot of Democratic voters recognize that the party is not on their side. And if they don't recognize it, they should. So I'm talking to you guys because we got to do something differently. This just isn't working. What we're doing now just isn't working. And a good example of this is clearly what's happening in the Middle East. Israel continues its genocidal assault on Gaza. And I don't really, and on Palestine more generally, apparently an American was killed by Israel. I think they beat I heard, and I didn't check into the story, I should have, I'm remiss, but apparently a Palestinian American was beaten to death over the weekend in the West Bank. So we're not safe either, right? Israel is making all of us less safe. In Gaza is the worst place to be. And we have from Anadolu Ajansi, death toll surpasses 57,800 amid relentless Israeli attacks. So it is just horrific there. We heard from a Palestinian on this program Thursday with Jay Waxy, friend of Halitics, and that was a very, very powerful, very moving, and extraordinarily, terrible thing to have to hear and to listen to. But we have to recognize just how awful the American policy, first promulgated by Biden-Harris and now continued by Trump, complete support for Israel, how devastating, how wrong it is, how terrible it is. We do talk about the specific numbers on this program, and the numbers seem to be a little bit confusing to me. I'm not sure just how many were killed, but over the weekend, or at least what the official numbers are. Democracy Now! Reported this morning another very, very deadly weekend with over 200 kills 200 Palestinians over another deadly weekend as the death toll tops 58,000. So that is from today's Democracy Now! And I'm wondering whether there's deaths that I reported Friday that may have actually transpired early Saturday that comes to that 200 number. Because if you look at the count from Anadolu Ajansi, it's quite a bit. It doesn't add up to over 200 over the weekend. Somewhere in the 50 plus range. So a much less awful, I mean, still awful, but still much less awful if you just go by Anadolu Ajansi's numbers compared to what we had Friday. So they're somewhere in the 50 range, because we were at 57,700 plus, well over 700 on Friday. We were well over 57,700. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 200 killed by Israel since Friday. And maybe we'll get more of an update. Tomorrow I will have an update for sure. And that includes 7,261 since March 18th, with Trump obviously responsible for that number, and Netanyahu for all of the deaths. There was a powerful video I do urge you to check out. I believe I shared it on Halitics on Facebook, which, by the way, if you're not a member yet, please, it's totally, just go to Halitics, type Halitics in your search book, in your search engine in Facebook, and you'll come right up to our group there. And it is growing. It's nice to see. Want to see more postings, although I guess I've been a little remiss in that area, but that's where we have a lot of ferment, a lot of back and forth. Also hope you'll, if you get a chance and you haven't yet done so, please do click subscribe now on your YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube, which is where we hope you will watch. I like to get a concentrated number on one platform, and YouTube is my choice platform, and we use that as our primary, but also, of course, on Facebook. Anywhere you watch, we love to have you. Please do call 240-242-5646. I mentioned I was at a Democratic Party talking session, or listening. I think they call it a listening session, Saturday. And this was in my home county, Montgomery County. The purpose is for elected leaders, elected reps in the Democratic Party, the Democratic Central Committee, to hear from constituents about what they view as the party's weaknesses and strengths, what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And the focus certainly on how can the party improve. I thought the session actually had some pretty good aspects to it. There was a lot of back and forth. There were some raised voices. I'll allude to it during the conversation today. But I think basically you have a party where the leadership, the elites, the establishment have very, very different interests. I mean, their actual financial interests are against, they oppose, right? What is good in terms of the economic interests of the leadership in the Democratic Party is without question opposed to the interests of the Democratic voters. So I don't see how you square that circle as long as the council members, the state delegates, the state senators, Congress members, U.S. senators, U.S. presidents, as long as their interests, regardless of party, lie with the billionaire elites, the billionaire class, then I don't see how the party can really change. That's why I've been such a staunch supporter of the Green Party, of alternatives to the Democratic Party. But let's look at, there's some glimmers, right? Mamdani, although the bloom is really starting to get off that rose, and I'll talk about that maybe either later today or tomorrow or during the week, maybe with Carlos at the end of the week. There do appear to be some glimmers of positivity in the Democratic Party, and we'll try to address that as well. That we have a race tomorrow. It's very, very important. It's a big deal. It really is. This is an important election, and we're going to get into it in great detail today. This is in Arizona 7. This is to replace a genuine progressive, Raul Grijalva. He was in Congress for over 20 years. I think he was first elected in 2003. He had been part of the Obama administration. This is a guy who had really real legit environmental chops, had pushed to protect the Grand Canyon. There was a lot of issues with smog there, power plants that were befouling the air above the Grand Canyon. Grijalva went to bat. He stood up to the power companies. Grijalva also has a real track record of setting aside public lands. This is Raul. Now he's dead. He's deceased. But he had a very strong track record of setting aside public lands and also promoting the interests of Native Americans, the indigenous people in Arizona and around the country. So, this is a guy who did some actual real positive work for the American people. Was it enough? I would say no. He still oversaw a decline overall in terms of the way the Democratic Party addresses and responds to the problems of the American people. But he tried. He did some good things. And I'm not going to pretend it isn't true or deny it or anything like that. I think he would have preferred someone who was more outspoken, who fought more publicly against Democratic elites. But Grijalva, that said, was a pretty good Congress member as far as Congress members go in this environment, in my opinion. That's my opinion. You have a different view, please share it. 240-242-5646. The show is not about me telling you what to think. This show is not about me providing my font of wisdom for you to drink in. I know there are hosts who do that. I'm not one of them. I asked this question. I was on a PDA, Progressive Democrats of America call. I've been quite critical, as you may know, of many of these institutions that have come to be, in my view, sheepdogs for the Democratic Party, that they provide a sort of a leftward boundary that's as far as they will go. And that leftward boundary is basically the Democratic Party. If you're trying to go outside the Democratic Party, or if you're too critical, even as a Democrat of the Democratic Party, if you call out the Democratic Party as corrupt, they're not going to go there. They will not say that. They are critical of the Democratic Party. They're critical of individuals within the party. But in the end, they take the position publicly, consistently, that the Democratic Party is the vessel that will lead us to a better place. And I disagree. I think the way we get to a better place is we sink this vessel, or at least we severely hobble it by taking another vessel, a greener vessel, a cleaner vessel, a less corrupt vessel, or hopefully a non-corrupt vessel. Progressive Democrats of America has gotten involved, as has Our Revolution, as has National Nurses United. I highlight them in the thumbnail for today's program. They've all endorsed, as have AOC and Bernie. They've all endorsed Raul Grijalva's daughter, Adelita, to replace him, to take what I think it seems clear they believe could be the Grijalva seat. And I don't believe in seats. I don't believe in naming seats. I don't believe in putting, embroidering Adelita Grijalva, or just Grijalva, on a chair that will be where the representative from the Arizona 7th Congressional District sits. I don't believe in that. I think you vote for the best candidate, the candidate who should be in that seat, not the candidate who inherited it. I don't believe in that. So, but that doesn't mean because Adelita Grijalva is Raul Grijalva's daughter, she's not the right choice. But the fact that she's his daughter certainly doesn't make her the right choice either, just as Andrew Cuomo was not the right choice to succeed after a couple of other placeholders, his father, Mario, in the New York's governor's mansion. So I asked PDA, and there's some, Deja Foxx is this social media influencer. She's 25 years old. She is one of among several other, I guess, challengers to the Grijalva, who's running for the, quote, Grijalva, unquote, seat. And I asked, well, why are you, and she's doing well. The latest polling shows Deja Foxx number 2 with a bullet. She's jumped quite a bit. So I asked PDA in this meeting we had yesterday, why are you supporting Adelita Grijalva over Deja Foxx, who seems to be the major competitor, right? Why? Because they were talking about this. This was like, let's get involved. Let's go. And tomorrow's the special primary. Tomorrow, Tuesday, is a special primary. So it's a big deal. If you're in Arizona, I'd love to hear from you. 240-242-5646. If you're familiar with this race, I'd love to hear from you. 240-242-5646. Frankly, I'm not that knowledgeable about it, but I've talked to people and I'm trying to get up to speed. I think it's really important we discuss this because it really reflects, in my view, where the Democratic Party is, where so-called progressive Democratic organizations are. It's not a good place. Just simply not a good place. If you look at the polling way back, it sort of looks like Mamdani to me a little bit. If you look at the polling here way back in May, Grijalva had 41% of the vote. Fox was only at 10%. Daniel Hernandez, a Hispanic activist also in that area, was at 16%. So a month later, a little over a month later, look at that. Fox, like Mamdani, surges, right? And in the polls that were just before the New York City mayoral election last month, Mamdani was close. He had really closed the gap, a huge gap that was enjoyed by Andrew Cuomo in that mayor's race, but he hadn't quite overcome the gap in the polling. And of course, he won easily by, a significant margin in the end, the vote. So will that recur? If a similar dynamic occurs tomorrow, you'll see Fox beating Grijalva, which I think is very, very possible. I think there's a very decent chance that will happen. If there was ranked choice voting in Arizona, as there is in New York, I would say I have no idea. I think that from looking at this race, Malvito's voters, you can see is 3%, would likely go to Fox, and Hernandez's might go to Grijalva, but I'm not sure about that. The Hernandez and Malvito are both more progressive than Grijalva, and Fox has campaigned to the left of Grijalva, so there's a good chance they would all support Fox. That said, Hernandez is a pretty well-known name. He's kind of more establishment, so it's quite possible his voters would also gravitate towards Grijalva. That's Adelita, the daughter of Raul. I don't know what would happen. I have no idea. But what I'm saying is there's a real good shot that Deja Foxx, 25-year-old social media influencer, could defeat 54-year-old Adelita Grijalva. My bias, to the extent I even have any bias when it comes to identity, would be for, in general, especially given the current environment, would probably be to a younger candidate, right? That said, 25 is really young, and 54 ain't that old. I mean, it's younger than I am. So I don't view Grijalva as, if she was 75, if she was 65, I would start saying, yeah, it's getting up there. I don't think the age is critical, but again, given how Congress is aging, Democrats in Congress are so old at this point, my general inclination would be a slight point for Fox if they're relatively even in terms of policy. But experience matters too, and we'll get into that. What surprises me is how the Democratic elites have so completely endorsed, and they really have. The elites, but also the progressive establishment, are all behind Grijalva. It's the Grijalva name. It's the Grijalva machine is what they call it in Tucson. And I recoil against that. I have a huge problem with that. I don't think that's, again, how we should elect people. And I think it's especially problematic when you look at specific issues and you look at who's supporting whom. So if you look at Fox on top there, this is based on their website. This is based on the issues on their site. Fox is for Medicare for all. Fox calls housing a human right. She's endorsed by one progressive group, Leaders We Deserve. That's David Hogg's group, which is explicitly for younger Democrats. Grijalva, not for Medicare for all, not for housing as a human right. And look at her support. And these are just a small sample, and it doesn't make sense to me. AOC, Bernie, Our Evolution, PDA, National Nurses United, which has been in the forefront of the fight for Medicare for all. So why would they support Grijalva? Are they just progressives? I mean, they are kind of progressive, but is that what's going on here? Or is there something a little bit more? And maybe there is. I asked, why? Why is PDA backing Adelita Grijalva? And I did get an answer, although they ultimately deleted, because I gave my argument against Grijalva later on in the program, and it was deleted. But we don't have to get into that. It's not really pertinent to this particular conversation, except that PDA doesn't want a debate. They don't want a discussion. They just want to tell you this is who you support. So I asked, why did you support Grijalva? Adelita is amazing on the issues we care about and has a great track record of public service. I take that second part pretty seriously, the great track record. I don't take the amazing on the issues, because we've already been through that. She isn't amazing, but we will hear from her. I want to go right through this because this seems to be, it's very, very frustrating. This is the general tenor is we're going to tell you how great she is, and then you're supposed to just fall in line. And it doesn't work. Here's AOC endorsing Grijalva. It's interesting because I didn't find anything that AOC posted that said she's endorsed her. Didn't look super closely. I'm going to assume Adelita Grijalva isn't going to put a picture of AOC. Now, obviously, that's not a picture of her with AOC. That's just superimposed. It's from AOC's website or something. It's not like they're standing together. It's not a social media post on X from AOC or whatever, Blue Sky or Blue, whatever the hell that group is that they use for the Blue Twitter thing or whatever, or Instagram. So I couldn't find anything in AOC's own words saying I support Grijalva, but she apparently does. I believe she does. But let's go to Bernie. This is really, I think, a much more interesting endorsement, because Bernie doesn't, she's not taking Bernie's picture from 40 years ago and saying, here, this guy supports me, the way she kind of does with AOC. Bernie cut an ad for her. I mean, that's a big deal. And we'll play that ad because it's just so interesting the way progressives, and he's gaslighting you. He's going to tell you things that just are false. It's really interesting. But I wanted to just note, so he cuts this ad and you look 7.8K. That's not that many views, right? I would have thought a lot more. This is Bernie Sanders. I think the guy's influence is waning a little bit. I truly do. He's popular, of course, on the left, but you know, an endorsement like this, I think a lot of people are saying, I don't know if we're going to really give it too much weight. Now, obviously, they're worried. The Democratic establishment is worried that she could lose this race. That's why AOC's out there. That's why maybe if she is, that's why Bernie's out there for her. That's why Mark Kelly and Gallego, Ruben Gallego, they endorse her. So there's clearly a real worry that Grijalva could lose. I don't know why they care so much, but they seem to. Here's the ad Bernie cut. I want to go through this pretty closely again because this is who your Democratic Party is. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to flack for basically the old guard at every opportunity. They're not going to embrace change. They're not going to embrace youth. And I don't think you should just for the sake of embracing youth, given how badly the Democratic Party is doing right now, given the hole it's in. Do you really want to triple down on what's been a losing strategy? Always supporting those who are next in line, regardless of whether they really are the most progressive. If they're the most progressive, fine, good. But is that what we're seeing in this race? Well, let's find out.
Hello, Arizona. It is hot here in Washington, D.C. I suspect it's even hotter in Tucson, Arizona. If you haven't already, please make sure you get out and vote for Adelita Grijalva in the special election for Arizona's 7th District ahead of the July 15th primary election. Adelita understands that real change never comes from the top on down, it's from the bottom on up.
So I wanted to stop it there. I thought that was an odd comment, only because he's saying, yeah, from the bottom, we need to push the grassroots. They need to be demanding change. I got that. But you got a candidate here who's an insider, right? I mean, she was the chair of the board of supervisors of Pima County. She's played the insider game. Her father was a very important Democrat for many years, both within the state of Arizona and on the national stage. So you're kind of promoting not somebody who's had to fight against, you know, an entrenched elite, a entrenched establishment. She's part of it. So I think that's kind of BS where he says, oh, she understands it comes from the bottom up. Maybe she understands it, but her history doesn't suggest that she understands it. Her history would suggest that she understands that her power comes from the fact that her father was a really, really powerful and important figure in Arizona politics for many years and built a machine, apparently a progressive machine, an effective machine that is fighting for working people, but nevertheless a top-down machine.
As a local official, she helped spearhead the first free preschool program for low and middle-income families in Tucson and championed historic investments in affordable housing.
So I'll stop it there. So I don't dismiss those. Those are important accomplishments. She does have some legit cred. She did put together a free lunch program, free food program for needy Tucsonians. And I think that's important. As far as I can understand it, she definitely did push for affordable housing. These are important issues. Yeah, good. That's good on her. Does that make her the best choice in the race? Well, I don't know that that's the case.
In Congress, Adelita will be working with me in the fight for Medicare for all.
I wanted to stop it right there. So this is what we're hearing. She's for Medicare for all, right? He just said it. Adelita will be working with me in the fight for Medicare for all. National Nurses United is all in for Medicare for all. PDA has it clearly in their platform. We'll show that that they support Medicare for all. That's like their core issue. I have been told by PDA organizers that we will only endorse candidates in most cases who are for Medicare for all. So what they're telling you is that Adelita Grijalva is for Medicare for all. And I just told you she isn't. We're going to go through the record. Is she? But this really grinds my gears. If you want to say, oh, she has great experience and she did this and she did that, that's fine. Don't tell me that she's for Medicare for all if she ain't for Medicare for all.
For bold climate action, for strong public education, and an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Let me be clear. Adelita is the progressive candidate in this race. She is not backed by corporate PACs or billionaire donors. She is backed by tens of thousands of ordinary people fueling her grassroots campaign.
All right, I appreciate that, Bernie. So that's a good message and all that. And he does a nice job with it. He talks about affordable housing. He specifically bases his support for her on what he claims is the fact that she will be, is his claim that she will be an ally in the fight for Medicare for all, which has been a signature Bernie Sanders issue. And remember what PDA said. We support her because she's amazing, in all caps, on the issues. And what's the issue they care most about? Well, it's right there. Healthcare human rights is part of PDA's fund human needs cut Pentagon waste purpose. In other words, healthcare is a human right. You get it. Period. End of story. We endorse and work primarily on expanded and improved Medicare for all. So given all that, how weird is it? How strange is it? How can you possibly defend? I don't understand how you can defend endorsing Adelita Grijalva. She's not for Medicare for all. I couldn't find one statement from her, and I looked everywhere. I couldn't find one place where she said, I support Medicare for all. I will be I will be Bernie's ally. I will be AOC's ally. I will be NNU's, National Nurses United ally. Not one place. What does she say on her website? Where do you put your platform first and foremost? Your website. What does she say? Defend Medicare, Medicaid. She does not say Medicare is a human right or healthcare is a human right. She does not say Medicare for all. She does not say I support universal single payer coverage. In fact, she says just the opposite. She says I support protecting Medicaid, Medicare. I support lower deductibles, premiums, and out-of-pocket caps. I support proposals that expand Medicare and Medicaid to provide universal and affordable. Not Medicare for all it's free at the point of delivery. It's not affordable. Medicare for all is everyone has health care. Everyone in, nobody out. No copays. You get your medication free when you go in for treatment. It's not that it's affordable, and it's not about access. It's that it's there, period, end of story. So she's not for Medicare for all. She hasn't cut an ad saying it. She hasn't come out in favor of it. Now, there is someone in that race who is. And her name, in fact, there's more than one person in that race who is for Medicare for all. And one of them is Deja Foxx. If you look at her website, she's very, very clear. She doesn't mince words. She says, I guess, Adelita, in the end, she says, yeah, the long-term goal, universal affordable care. That's not what Deja Foxx says. She says Medicare for all. She doesn't mince words. She says this is the best path forward to ensure everyone has access to comprehensive coverage. She does say that doesn't break the bank. I don't think she's perfect. I'll be perfectly honest, but she says right there she's for Medicare for all, and it's not tied to employment. So again, clearly she's better on this issue. She's better. Adelita Grijalva has not said, does not come out and say she supports or will endorse Medicare for all. Now, Bernie said she'll be an ally, but if he's going to say that, shouldn't he demand that she at least put on her website? I wonder whether he's confused. Maybe he is confusing her with her father, because Raul was indeed a co-sponsor of Medicare for all. He was an original co-sponsor. He truly walked the walk on this issue. Now, again, it's one thing to be a co-sponsor. It's easy to do. The Democrats aren't in power. There's not a majority. You're never going to have to vote on it. But all that said, yes, he came right out. He always was there. It wouldn't have been hard for Adelita Grijalva to just say, yeah, I support Medicare for all. But she didn't do it. She just wouldn't do it. And I think, and if you say, well, there might be a better way, right? There's better ways than Medicare for all to ensure guaranteed universal single payer coverage. Okay, well then what are they? Then fine. Then tell us what they are. Tell us that you have a different plan. But she's not for Medicare for all. She just flat out hasn't said she is. So I don't understand that. Now, another issue that is really, really important, obviously, is housing, is affordability. And there's one candidate who said housing is a human right, and that's Deja Foxx. It is not Adelita Grijalva. So again, you see one candidate who's clearly better on the issue, at least when it comes to what they put on their website. Now, can you lie on your website? That's why I'm not going to exactly condemn the progressive groups, but I truly don't understand this endorsement. You just haven't made a case. Bernie says she supports Medicare for all, but she doesn't say she's for Medicare for all. Bernie says she'll fight for affordable housing. But Deja Foxx is the one who says housing is a human right. She wants social housing. She says, I want as much as 20 million new units of social housing. That's housing that isn't for-profit housing, that isn't owned by the private sector. I looked this up. I want to be very, very clear what she means by social housing. We're living in an affordability crisis. We cannot affect, given massive wealth and income inequality, we cannot expect the private sector will not be a vehicle to bring about truly affordable, truly available, guaranteed housing for all. It won't do it because it's not in its interest. Deja Foxx says, I want 12 million units of social housing. What is it? Social housing is a public option for housing. It is permanently and deeply affordable. This is not from Deja Foxx. Under community control and exists outside of the speculative real estate market. So this is the right policy. This is like Mamdani. We need to be building housing. Now, he does talk a lot about a housing freeze, but he also has talked quite a bit about building housing. So he is in a very different place, and she, Deja Foxx, is in a different place. Both of them are in a different place than Adelita Grijalva. She is not for massive investments in public housing. She is not for social housing that is beyond the control of the private sector. She talks about the private sector being a vehicle to ultimately bring about the housing that people need. And that's, again, not going to do it. So you're seeing these Democratic groups they're Democratic aligned groups, PDA, Our Revolution, and very sadly, also very, very sadly, National Nurses United falling in line for Grijalva. There she is with Mark Kelly, the conservative corporate Dem senator, one of the two conservative corporate Dem senators in Arizona, both of whom have endorsed Grijalva. And what does she say? Promote affordable housing. So that sounds good. She supports construction of new affordable housing, grants, housing repairs, guaranteed housing assistance, but nothing to provide, nothing about social housing, government built, government constructed, government owned housing. She doesn't talk about that. She wants to make home ownership possible with down payment assistance for first generation buyers. Okay, that's fine. I mean, don't oppose that. But in the end, that is a boon for the for-profit housing construction industry, because it means that consumers, buyers, its customers will have more money to spend on its housing. So in the end, it really won't bring down prices. It'll just mean for some lucky buyers, it's more affordable. That's very, very different from the Deja Foxx plan, which is to have 12 million new units that are to be controlled by the community itself. So when it comes to the actual policies enunciated, Adelita Grijalva is not amazing. The one who's amazing in terms of the policies that are announced, at least when it comes to housing, which are incredibly important issues, right? Housing and healthcare. Foxx is clearly better. She's better. And it's so frustrating to see these progressive groups lining up behind her, and progressives like AOC and Bernie lining up behind her, trying to gaslight you. Oh, she's amazing on the issue. She's not as good. She's clearly not as good. It sucks. It's BS. Now, all that said, I don't know that I love Deja Foxx. When it comes to Israel, she hasn't said we've got to cut Israel off. She does say we shouldn't be providing a blank check. She uses that expression, no blank check, which is a little bit better than than Grijalva, who talks about a ceasefire, and they both talk about two-state solutions. They're not ideal on this issue, and it's a really important issue, obviously, if you're running for Congress. They're not the worst. They're not ideal. I'm not going to give Fox any points when it comes to the Israel-Gaza genocide over Grijalva, because I don't think Fox is talking powerfully enough about this. And I do want to give a little bit of props again to Grijalva. She did do some work as Pima County Commissioner, and that did lead to more preschool and, the lunches. You go to preschool, you get food, you get supplies. It does help the family. There's no question. This is a nice thing that she did. But, again, this is, you're 54, you've been in government for a long time. This is a great accomplishment, but is this enough? Is this enough for us to say, okay, you should be the Congress member, because when you oversaw an expansion of preschool and free lunches? I'm not convinced of that. I'm not convinced of that at all. I note a couple of other points. I mentioned this. This is a huge black mark, in my opinion, against Grijalva. Those two corporate Dems, pro-war Dems, Zionist Dems, both endorsing her. That's a bad sign. There's no way to spin that except as a bad sign. I'll give you the explanation that I heard, which I think has a little bit of legitimacy. And that explanation was, this is not a testament to the Grijalva machine's ultimate corporate bent or ultimate moderate bent. This is a nod to its power, to its influence. Kelly and Gallego endorsed her because they're afraid of the Grijalva machine. They want to be in good with the Grijalva machine in Tucson. Tucson's the second largest city in Arizona. Important Democratic stronghold, more so, I believe, than Phoenix is. Could be wrong about that, but I believe that's the case. And given that fact, we want to stay in good with the Grijalva. So even though we don't love Adelita's progressivism, such as it is, this is the explanation. We're still going to endorse her. Okay. I mean, maybe there's something to that. But I can tell you what, the corporate Dems, none of them endorsed Mamdani, right? I mean, not one supported Mamdani in the primary. The fact that these two pretty conservative Democratic, very corporate Democratic senators decided that Mamdani's the one, decided that Grijalva is the right candidate for them, I do think that tells you something about her. Again, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, they did not endorse Mamdani. In fact, even after he won, they still haven't endorsed him. So there's good reason to be suspicious about Grijalva, Adelita Grijalva. All that said, I want to play this because I'm not loving Deja Foxx either. In the end, what this whole conversation is about, the paucity of options that the Democratic Party gives you. Even in a dark blue progressive district, you've got okay candidates, at least in the lead, Grijalva and Fox. Let's play this. There is a guy I like in this, though, by the way. I want to play this debate. Again, just shows you we've got to go in a different direction. We've got to embrace the Green Party. We've got to embrace progressives. We cannot continue down the dead end that is Democratic Party politics. Here we go.
Get this thing started, Deja. We'll start with you, Congressional District 7. The biggest needs in the district and your top priority from day one.
Yeah, like I said, I was born and raised right here in Tucson in Congressional District 7 by a
So he says, what are the biggest problems and what's your top priority, right? So, I would have thought immediately you would say, well, there's a homeless crisis or there's affordability crisis. But she says, oh, she wants to give you her backstory. Right there, that's a big red flag. That's Deja Foxx. So that's the candidate ultimately I would vote for in this primary. I would vote for her based on the youth. I would also vote for her based on her policy prescriptions are better. I'm not going to vote for Grijalva when she won't embrace Medicare for all, when she won't embrace affordable housing, period, as a human right, when her opponent does. I won't. But I'm not loving her either. She's not Mamdani, who I don't even love him. But here, let's play some more.
And she worked every odd job that you can imagine. She cleaned.
This is the Kamala Harris, my mom. She worked every odd job. I was, a single mom, this, that. This is like this whole, that's not the issue. The issue is what are you going to do to make life better for people in Tucson and in your district?
Post office, I know what the American dream and good policy could do because it was because of good policy, right? Access to reproductive care, quality public education that I was able to go on to be the first in my family to go to college. And so for me, protecting social services isn't just a talking point. We know that Donald Trump has put families like mine in his crosshairs. Republicans are attempting to pass bills in the middle of the night.
So again, now the pivot to Trump. And again, all of this is what we've seen so many times from Democrats who don't want to stand for something, who don't want to fight for working people because it's hard, because you make powerful enemies, you make wealthy enemies when you do that, and you kind of cut your own throat when it comes to getting a high-paying, easy job when you leave Congress. And, maybe she doesn't want to do that. And there's other factors, too, with Deja Foxx. I am not endorsing Deja Foxx. I would probably vote for her over. I actually wouldn't vote for either her or, to be honest with you, I wouldn't vote for either one. But the point of this program is to say that the Democratic Party is a dead end, that the endorsers, whether they're these Democratic-aligned groups like PDA or Our Revolution who have endorsed her, or that has endorsed Grijalva, Adelita, or the unions, they're not on your side. These institutions do not fight for you. They're not looking out for you. If they were, they would be endorsing somebody altogether different in this race. We'll get to him in a little bit.
Of their access to health care, would take food off of our tables and line the pockets of billionaires. This isn't just wrong, it is unacceptable. And it's why I'm in this fight, because families like ours have been left out of the halls of power.
Adelita, again, day one, your top priority, the first thing you want to get done.
I think it's really important to understand that when Trump passed this big, beautiful bill.
So look what she does. Exactly what Foxx did, right? Both of them. Let's talk about Trump. Let's talk about that. Wasn't the question. The question was, what's your priority? What will you do if you are elected on day one? And she doesn't tell you. People hate this. They friggin' hate this.
One of the ugliest bills that has come through that we've seen. It really targeted our most marginalized communities, from seniors, veterans, mothers, children, our indigenous and LGBTQ plus communities.
So there, you just heard her give a whole litany. All the people, our children, I think what you say is this bill hurts poor, struggling, and working Arizonans. That's all you have to say. Poor, struggling, and working Arizona. That's who this bill hurts. That's what I would have wanted her to say. By the way, she has on her website, I didn't show it, I didn't highlight this, does Adelita Grijalva, opposition to tariffs. That is a huge red flag for me. Tariffs are crucial. I've been through this a million times. I so get it that so many progressives are anti-tariff, and part of the reason they're anti-tariff is because of Trump. They forget, they refuse to acknowledge, and that's part of the reason. The other reason is that because corporate interests are opposed to tariffs. And people, even if they're to the left, even if they're progressive, even if they recognize how bad corporations are, they don't want to pick fights with them. They want to stay on their good side to the extent they possibly can. And it seems like, oh, well, tariffs are easy. Trump's for them, so we're against them. And the fact that corporations don't like tariffs either, well, that's okay. That's the attitude. Not, well, Trump is the blind squirrel who found an acorn, which in this case he clearly did. So lots of reasons, in my view, not to endorse Grijalva.
Of their norm, if you're not following their ideology, then you're part of the problem. And so day one, we have to fight against Trump. We cannot let Trump take away Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, because 347,000 Arizonans and 142,000 children depend on it. That's just one of the big issues that we have to work on.
Patrick?
All right, so she doesn't tell you what she would do on day one. She just doesn't. I'm going to fight against this. I'm going to fight. There's no vision. And frankly, Fox's answer was pretty disappointing as well. She's better when it comes to the issues, at least as they're enunciated on her website, clearly in that vein. And, that notwithstanding the fact that they gaslight us, the Democratic elites, AOC, Bernie gaslight us, Democratic front groups, PDA, Our Revolution, NNU, gaslight us and say, oh yeah, she's for Medicare for all, or she's the most progressive, she's amazing on the issues. No, clearly she's not. Let's go to, but again, this, just because one candidate isn't great doesn't mean the other one, the one she's, her number one opponent is so great either, right? I mean, this is like what people say is, well, Trump is so bad, the Democrat must be okay. No. Quite simply put, no. Here's Deja Foxx. And, look, this wouldn't keep me from voting for her, but just like the endorsements by Kelly and Gallego for Grijalva, those are big red flags. This is a big red flag. Here's Deja Foxx at last year's Democratic National Convention.
People my age are making big decisions about our lives, and we deserve a president who has our back. Not some power-hungry millionaire reality TV personality who only cares about himself. We need Kamala Harris. She'll deliver a future where we can decide if and when to start a family. A future where we can afford rent and groceries. A future where we're not crushed under student debt. A future where any free lunch kid can walk through the gates of their dream college.
All right, so she speaks well, but I mean, she's caping for a bad candidate, and it's very dishonest. Affordability was not a centerpiece in any way of Harris's campaign after the first couple of weeks. She did talk about, bringing actions against grocery stores that conspire to keep prices relatively high, that collude. or that you take advantage of shortages to artificially boost prices. So that was fair. Harris did talk a little bit about affordable housing, but by the time of the convention, she basically moved hard to the center. She was a standard issue standard issue right corporatist Democrat. And for Harris, for Foxx to be there trying to get young people to vote for Harris, which she failed signally to do, right? Because young people did not vote for Harris. That was wrong. I mean, it's just flat wrong. And I get it. You're 25. It's incredibly exciting. You get invited to speak at the Democratic convention. Wow. And all I have to do is say a few nice things about Kamala Harris and, you know, and given who she's running against, I'll have no problem with doing it. I get it. I really, really do. That's why I said I would not vote against her for it. But it still doesn't look good. It's still bad. You're still supporting a genocidal candidate. You're still supporting a corporate candidate. You're still supporting a candidate who's dead set against Medicare for all, who's dead set in favor of fracking. It's not defensible. And it's such bad politics. Not just what Foxx did, but what both the way Grijalva and Foxx are campaigning. Now, one of them's going to win. Who do I think is going to win? I actually do think it's going to be Foxx. I think that she was close enough in a couple of weeks ago. I bet she wins. I think that people are so fed up in every way with the Democratic Party that they'll go for the alternative. And fine, I would too. If it was between those two, I think Foxx is okay enough that I would vote for her, because some candidates I won't vote for her. I would vote for her in this case. I mean, for sure, she's for Medicare for all. She calls housing a human right. But, you know, I would do it with my eyes wide open. New poll delivers troubling signs for Democrats. What are Democrats doing wrong? Well, let's see what Amy Parnes, who's great. She's a really good reporter. You know, I'm critical of a lot of people, but not of Amy Parnes and her partner, Jonathan Allen. They basically just give you the facts. They've done some really good work. They covered the Hillary Clinton loss in 2016. They did a really good job with that. They covered Kamala in 2024. So they're good. They're very, in my opinion, very reliable, very honest, and mostly nonpartisan, unbiased. So yeah, I like those two, and I take what they have to say very, very seriously. They're reporting on a Hill poll and how the Democratic Party's credibility with voters has plummeted even further. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? As bad as Trump has been, right? He's been a bad president, really bad in a lot of ways. I don't want to get into all of it. Trump sucks. And yet, despite the fact that their opponent, their primary, but the man that they have done everything possible to implant as the counterpoint to them, that they're the counterpoint to Donald Trump. The Democrats have done everything they can. And yet, despite that, the Democrat Party's credibility has plummeted. People don't believe them. People don't trust them. People don't support them. Why? How are they viewed? Out of touch. These are negatives. Woke. That's huge. Think about it. Woke. In other words, they focus on identity. That's what matters to them. Is your innate identity, your ethnicity, your race, your sexuality. That is, or at least that's what they talk. That's what Democrats talk about. And that's a big negative for voters. Voters don't like that. Voters don't want you to be woke. They want you to talk about everyone. They want you to have universal policies that make life better for everybody. Contrast that. That's what voters want. Contrast that preference of voters with the way Grijalva at that debate gives a laundry list of all the people that are going to be hurt by Trump policies, rather than just saying, yes, poor, struggling, and working people. And say, you know, our trans community, our gay community, our women, or this, or Latino, or immigrant. People listen to that and they think, well, wait, what about me? What about my group? Or are you going to list everybody in the whole world? Talk about poor, struggling, working people every single time, and that's how you win. Except you don't win, or if you're a Democrat, because you make very powerful, very wealthy enemies, the billionaire class, because they are not poor, they're not struggling, they're not working class, and they don't give a rat's fat butt about any of those people. Do you want to win? or do you want to ingratiate yourself with the billionaire class? You have to make that decision. Clearly, Grijalva is worse than Foxx on this, but Foxx ain't great either. So let's get into this idea, this idea that the woke is a problem for the Democrats, that when you identify identity as a primary reason to support a candidate rather than their policies, you actually turn voters off. You lose. And again, this is exactly what the Grijalva campaign has been doing, or at least that's who her supporters, they view this, as I mentioned before, it's the Grijalva seat. It's also a Latino seat, at least according to them. And it's odd that they would make that argument because there's two other Latinos in the race. So why does it have to be Adelita? I guess the argument is, well, first of all, it is the Grijalva seat. And second of all, the argument is she's running against her primary opponent, the one who could beat her, Deja Foxx. I'm trouble with Deja. Is not, as far as I can tell, Latino or Latina. She identifies as Filipino heritage. She was raised by a single mom. I'm not sure she knows who her father is. So it is conceivable that she is part Latino. When you look at her, it's hard to tell. Maybe she's part African American. She might be Blasian. We don't know. But the fact that we don't know and that she's clearly of some meaning Deja Foxx, is of some unidentifiable background in certain ways, to me, is a complete repudiation of this focus on identity. This is what America's become. We're not a stew. We really are a melting pot now. It used to be we were a stew. We were called a melting pot, but really, you put in the stew the Italian Americans, the Jewish Americans, Irish Americans, African Americans already here when these other groups came in. So they all came in and they were in the stew pot, but they maintained a lot of separate identities, separate cultural touchstones, right? People tended, first, second, even third generations tended to marry within that group. Now, not always, not invariably, but, a lot of Jewish people, even I'm third generation. My mom was born here. I guess my mom was the first. I'm second. My mom was the first generation born here. Her parents were were actually born in Russia. So the first generation born here was my mom. I'm second. I actually did marry a Jewish woman, but, my sister did not. So that's when you start seeing more and more of the melting pot where groups are melting into each other. And I think you see that also with Deja Foxx, at least perhaps. So the idea that somehow we've got to be focused on protecting the Latino seat is really dated. And it's a level of wokeism, I think, that's very harmful to the Democratic Party. That that the slice and dice politics, you're in this group, that means you vote Democrat. You're in that group, that means you vote Democrat. We get, Irish people voted for JFK in 1960, and they should still be voting for Democrats today. Trump hates immigrants. He hates Latinos. You have to vote for the Democrat. That's just not how Americans are seeing the world these days. But that is how bold, and I don't know what bold even is, some PAC chair, Linda Sanchez, said, anyone who sees Arizona's 7th district as anything other than a fight for Latino representation in America is enabling all those who seek to disenfranchise our community and silence our voices. It's so failing to read the room when you say that. You've completely failed to read what's happening in America. The voices, the many Latino voices who actually embraced Trump. The young Latinos who are saying the old generation has not stood by us. And the voices that say we're Latino, but we're also black and we're also Asian and we're also white. And she completely misses that boat. This is the way Democrats, again, decide that they're going to, just simply jump into the ocean and drown themselves with those kinds of incredibly stupid statements, in my opinion. All right, 240-242-5646. I do want to see, are we at the one? Yeah, so we're at the 1 hour mark. I did say I don't love Deja Foxx. If it's a race between her and Adelita Grijalva, I would vote for Foxx. I don't think Grijalva is a terrible candidate, even though I totally reject categorically Bernie's assertion that she supports Medicare for all. She has not come out and said that. She's not put that on her website. For him to say she's the progressive in the race is just flat out wrong. And even Deja Foxx has some positives, but also negatives. This is the progressive in the race. He's polling at 3%, but he says he's saying the right. This is the message that, you know what? If AOC and Bernie, and if those progressive groups really, really, really wanted to make America better, if they really, really, really wanted to take our country back, then they would endorse Jose Malvito. I mean, it's just that simple. This is the right answer. He gives you a better answer here than anything even Zoran Mamdani, in my opinion, has said.
I think that it's really easy to talk about Donald Trump. That's a given. But what we need in Congress is a long-term vision to transform the Democratic Party in order to take back the Congress. Not just to win it back, to lose it again, this back and forth. We need to transform the Democratic Party. So part of this is proposing a higher minimum wage, Medicare for all, and really supporting the people in that way. Affordable housing, all these different issues that people need. But again, it's not just about the low-hanging fruit, which is Donald Trump. Anybody could talk about Trump, but it's really about transforming the Democratic Party for the long term, because we have lost it and we need to get it back.
That's your choice. That's the choice, the right choice in Arizona 7. And I know he's going to be an also-ran. He'll probably come in fourth, Jose Malvito. He has my vote. He would have my vote if I lived there. And this is what is so incredibly frustrating. I'll finish this off. So incredibly frustrating with these so-called progressive organizations that are supposed to be outside the Democratic Party and playing inside-outside. Okay, he's not going to win. I get it. But why don't you try to help him win anyway? Why don't you do the best you can for him anyway? Why don't you promote his candidacy anyway? Then you build up your own credibility. And maybe in the next race you do win. I mean, look, they're not going to do it. They won't do it. They want to be with the winner. They want to be in the winner's circle. They think it's going to be Grijalva. Fine. Just like they thought in the end Mamdani would win. They really couldn't endorse anyone else. Anyway, maybe Brad Lander. They saw, so 4 days before the election, you endorse Mamdani. I mean, big whoop. That's why they have so little influence. That's why they have so little sway. And that's why people are looking elsewhere. But we've got to start looking in the right places for the right people, and we've got to get behind them. That's what this program's all about. Halitics, thank you so much for being part of Halitics.